It began like so many viral stories do, with a short clip that seemed too shocking to ignore. On screens across the world, people watched as a young woman stood balanced on the sleek black and white back of an orca. The whale rose high from the pool, water spraying around her as the crowd cheered. She looked confident, even joyful, as if she had done this countless times before. The audience clapped, the music swelled, and for a moment it seemed like nothing could go wrong. Then, in the blink of an eye, the mood changed. The whale lunged upward, twisted, and pulled the woman down beneath the surface. Gasps filled the stadium. Shouts broke out. The camera shook as someone tried to keep filming while the scene spiraled into chaos. For those who saw the video for the first time, it felt like watching death unfold in real time. The title said her name was Jessica Radcliffe. The caption claimed she was a marine trainer at Pacific Blue Marine Park. And the whispers spreading alongside the clip were even darker, that she had been killed by the orca during a live performance, that she never came back up. Within hours, the video had spread from TikTok to Facebook to X, piling up millions of views. Each repost carried the same haunting claim, that the trainer had died in front of everyone, pulled under by the very creature she had trusted. People reacted with horror. Some said they couldn't believe what they had just seen. Others cried out that the footage was proof of why killer whales should never be held in captivity. There were angry comments aimed at the park for not protecting her, and there were sorrowful posts mourning a life cut short. Even those who didn't know her name before the video felt a sudden wave of grief for her. The tragedy seemed real, and it seemed cruel. And yet something about the video unsettled people in a different way. It didn't just stir sadness, it also planted fear. The sight of such a huge, powerful animal turning in an instant against the person who rode its back shook viewers to the core. People imagined what it must have felt like for her in those final seconds. The cold rush of water, the crushing weight of the whale, the panic of not being able to breathe. That thought stayed with them long after the video ended, long after they closed the app. The more it spread, the more the story grew. Some posts claimed she was pulled from the water and declared dead only minutes later. Others said the park had immediately covered up the incident, that no official statement was given. A few even claimed the audience was forced to leave the stadium in silence while staff rushed to hide the truth. Each version added new layers of drama, making the DD tragedy feel even larger, even more unbelievable. But that was the strange thing. It felt almost too large, too perfect as a story, too designed to shock. People began to ask questions, and the questions grew louder with each passing day. Who was Jessica Radcliffe? Why hadn't any major news outlet covered the death of a trainer in such a violent, public way? Why was the park she supposedly worked at so hard to find online? Even those who wanted to believe struggled to ignore the cracks. Some noticed that the movements of the water looked unnatural, like pieces of animation stitched together. Others pointed out that the voices in the background sounded oddly flat, like they were generated rather than spoken. A few sharp-eyed viewers slowed down the footage frame by frame and saw unnatural pauses, strange glitches, things that didn't add up. Still, for many, the details didn't matter. They had already felt the fear. They had already absorbed the grief. In a world where emotions spread faster than facts, the shock had already done its work. The story had entered their minds and left its mark. As days passed, debates grew heated. Some swore it was real, that the world simply didn't want to admit such a horror had taken place. Others said it was fake, but still dangerous, a cruel trick designed to draw in views and ad money. Still others stayed quiet, unable to decide what to believe, unsettled by how convincing the clip looked. And in the middle of all of it was the image of Jessica Radcliffe, a woman who may or may not have ever existed. A woman the internet mourned, debated, and shared endlessly, as if she had lived among us and died in front of a screaming crowd. Her story, whether true or false, was no longer just a video. It was a mirror, reflecting back people's deepest fears about trust, about nature, about what it means to believe in something you see with your own eyes. The clip carried a strange power. It made people look closer at the boundary between truth and fiction, between memory and invention. It showed how easily the mind can be tricked when emotion leads the way. And even though no one yet knew the full truth, the video had already left a mark that was hard to erase. People remembered the sound of the crowd gasping. They remembered the way the water closed over her body. They remembered the silence after. The cheering stopped. And above all, they remembered how real it all felt. Too real, perhaps, for comfort. The questions didn't stop. They grew louder with every repost, every share, every whisper that carried the video further. People wanted answers because if this tragedy had truly happened, it would be one of the most shocking marine park accidents of all time. And yet, when journalists began to search, they ran into walls of silence. There were no official reports, no statements, no witnesses stepping forward beyond the shaky footage that everyone had already seen. The first thing investigators noticed was the name of the park, Pacific Blue Marine Park. It sounded real enough, but it appeared on no official records, no directories, no maps. Search engines gave nothing but re-uploads of the same viral clip. Not a single address, not a single employee, not even an old news story about shows or events there. It was as if the place had been invented only for the sake of the video. Then came the name Jessica Radcliffe. On social media, people wrote posts mourning her, calling her brave, calling her a victim. But when reporters dug deeper, there were no records of her either. No trainer with that name had ever been linked to any marine park. No obituary, no family members, nothing. The name existed only inside the video, tied to the story that had already taken root in people's minds. Still, doubts weren't enough for everyone. The footage looked so believable that people demanded more proof. Fact-checkers began to study it frame by frame. What they found only deepened the mystery. When the Orca leapt from the water, its movements didn't flow naturally. There were slight hesitations, strange ripples that appeared and disappeared too cleanly. The sound of the crowd, when isolated, revealed voices that seemed oddly flat, repeating in unnatural loops, like echoes that had been pieced together by a machine. Even the music in the background shifted in strange, jarring ways, as though it had been layered in afterwards. Slowly, the picture became clearer. The video wasn't a recording of reality. It was a product of something else entirely: artificial intelligence. The technology had reached a point where water, voices, even facial expressions could be generated with frightening accuracy. To the untrained eye, it felt real. To the heart, it felt terrifying. But under the microscope, the illusion began to fall apart. For many viewers, this discovery sparked relief. If the video was fake, then Jessica Radcliffe hadn't suffered, hadn't drowned, hadn't been crushed under the weight of a whale she trusted. There was no grieving family, no real tragedy. The horror had been nothing more than a trick. But for others, the relief was mixed with anger. They felt betrayed. They had cried for her, argued about her, carried her image in their minds for days. They had shared their grief publicly, believing it was real. To find out it had all been a lie. That stung in a different way. It made them question not just the video, but themselves. Why had they believed so quickly? Why hadn't they waited for confirmation? And if this clip could fool them, how many others already had? Fact-checking outlets rushed to publish their findings. Articles appeared with headlines calling the video a hoax, a fabrication with no basis, in fact. Forbes pointed out that if such a tragedy had really taken place, international news networks would have covered it immediately. The Economic Times noted that not a single marine park on Earth had reported such an incident, and that the trainer's name matched no employment records. Even forensic analysts confirmed it. The movements of the water, the sound of the crowd, the pauses in the clip were hallmarks of AI-generated content. Yet even with the truth exposed, the video kept spreading. By then, it had grown too large to stop. People continued to share it, either unaware of the fact checks or unwilling to believe them. Some argued that the fake story was actually a cover-up, that the truth was being hidden by powerful corporations to protect marine parks. Others said it didn't matter if it was real or fake. The emotional impact was real enough, and that was what people would remember. The conversation shifted. It was no longer just about Jessica Radcliffe, a woman who never existed. It became a larger debate about the world we live in now. A world where a tragedy can be created out of nothing. A world where grief can be stirred by pixels and algorithms, where fear can spread from sounds that were never spoken. A world where seeing is no longer believing.